أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So this paper is for me and for my other 3 colleagues. So the paper is on concept of deposit insurance, a comparative study between conventional system and Shariah. So this concept of general insurance is a measure implemented by countries, by different countries. For example, to insure depositors in banks, in particular banks of those particular countries. Because in case if the bank faces a problem, financial problem, then the customers will be compensated from that deposit insurance. So the historical background of this deposit insurance, of course, it started in the United States in 1900s, and also in Europe in 1921. That was in Norway, and of course, other countries also in Western Europe they started. For example, Germany started in 1974, followed by Belgium, Austria, and France in 1974. 1979 and 1980 respectively. And in the UK, they started this concept of deposit insurance in 1986. In Canada, they adopted the system in 1967. And in Asia, India was the first country to start the practice of deposit insurance, which was in 1961, followed by the Philippines in 1963. And other countries, for example, such as Malaysia, and Indonesia, they started the practice of this deposit insurance in 1998 and 1999 because of the financial crisis that hit those countries during that time. So this concept, of course, is of different kinds. That is of two types. There is implicit deposit insurance and there is explicit deposit insurance. So from the word implicit, as it implies, you can see that implicit means there is no clear provision by the government of that country. That is, there is no any regulation, written regulation, that the government is going to compensate depositors of banks that are. But for example, it is implied from the practices of that country. So that is the meaning of implicit. But explicit, in explicit, it is clearly stated. That is, the government stated clearly that it is going to provide compensation to depositors if their banks fail. So that is the 2 kinds of deposit insurance. That is the implicit and the explicit. So this is the concept, of course, from the conventional system. So now we are talking about the Islamic deposit insurance. As we know, of course, all these concepts, they are conventional, that is deposit insurance and banking and all those things, they are from the conventional system. So we are trying to Islamize them now. So now we are looking at the background of the Islamic deposit insurance, how it started. Of course, all it started because of this Islamization of the current conventional system. So just like the conventional system, the Islamic deposit insurance also has the same aim. That is to protect depositors in the Islamic banking institutions. That is, if customers deposit their money in Islamic banks, so if in case those banks are to fail, that is, they are to face insolvency, then those customers will be compensated by the deposit insurance corporations. So that, of course, the concept is very new in the Islamic financial system. So in the historical background of this concept, Islamic deposit insurance, the first country that established it is Sudan in 1996, then Malaysia in 2005. And then here also Turkey developed this in 2001. But of course, Turkey does not have a separate legislation for this. It is covered by the conventional system. That means the deposit insurance is governed under the conventional system of Turkey. Okay, just as I just mentioned, there are countries that, of course, they don't have a separate legislation, but the practices of the Islamic deposit insurance is governed under their conventional system. So like, for example, Turkey, as we just mentioned now, and Indonesia. So why do we need this deposit insurance system in the Islamic? Why do we need the Islamic deposit insurance system? Of course, we know that because Muslims, many Muslims, just like banks and banking, that is family, life insurance, general insurance, of course, all these practices of the conventional financial institutions, the Muslims, of course, are not maybe comfortable with those practices because they are not in line with the Islamic Shariah. So that is what, of course, we need to get the Islamic one. That those institutions that practice this concept of deposit insurance based on the Islamic principles. So that is why, of course, all the practices of this deposit insurance corporation has to abide by the principles of the Sharia. Of course, in implementing the concept of deposit insurance, maybe each country has its own way of looking at it. But of course, generally, countries, when they want to implement a new system, for example, they look at, that is the maslaha, that is the benefit to the public. What benefit does it bring to the public? But of course, as we know, in Islam, maslaha is not enough. Because you cannot rely completely on maslaha in order to practice anything you want. Even if something is supporting public interest, but of course it has to be in line with the Sharia. So that is because we know one of the conditions of maslaha is that it has to bring benefit to people and it must not contradict with the Islamic principle. So of course that is why, beside this maslaha, in order to make this practice of deposit insurance Islamic, different countries adopt different Islamic contracts. So for example, like we are going to discuss a brief practice of Malaysia, that is of deposit insurance. Malaysia, they have dual deposit insurance system. They have the conventional and they have the Islamic. But of course, they are all governed under one body, which is the Malaysia Deposit Insurance Corporation Act. So it is one body that govern these two deposit insurance institutions, both the conventional and the Islamic. But of course, with different rules. And in the practice of Islamic deposit insurance, Malaysia, based on the fatwa by the SAC, Sharia Advisory Council of Bank Negara, which is of course the highest authority for resolving Sharia issues. Anything related to Sharia, they have to be the first people to be consulted in order to give their own view based on Islamic principle. So according to them, they adopt this kafala bil-ujr in order to practice the concept of deposit insurance in order to make it Islamic. Of course, the concept of kafala bil-ujr is that you guarantee someone, but as a result of that, he has to pay you something. That is the concept of kafala bil-ujr. So that is the fatwa by the SAC to this Malaysian Deposit Insurance Corporation. That is, they should adopt kafala bil-ujr to practice the concept of deposit insurance in order to make it Islamic. Of course, there are criticisms with regard to this adoption of kafala bil-ujr to practice concept of deposit insurance. Some scholars are of the opinion that this is not Islamic because guarantee itself is a voluntary action. You are doing something voluntarily. So if you are helping someone voluntarily, you should not ask him to give you something. So that is why, according to some scholars, it is not appropriate to use kafala bil-ujr in order to practice this concept of deposit insurance. But maybe after finish, yes. Of course, as we mentioned, the justification by this SAC is that of the public interest. That is why they said, okay, we need to at least get a contract that can allow us to practice this deposit insurance based on the maslaha. Because according to them, okay, if for example Islamic banking institutions, they are deprived from getting this kind of benefit. What about if their customers are to lose their money? For example, if a particular Islamic banking institution is to fall into financial crisis, what is going to happen with their customers? So that is, and according to them, to have this, for example, to have this common concept, to practice this concept without this guarantee is very rare, because of course we know all these financial institutions, they are here to make money. So you cannot say, you cannot ask them to do something voluntarily. And also, of course, we cannot totally rely on the government. We say, okay, all this deposit insurance, that is the compensation is to be provided by the government. That is, customers deposit their money in Islamic banking institutions, and in case if a failure is to happen to each or any one of those banks, if we say the government is going to compensate them, it is going to be very big burden on the government. So that is one of the arguments. So of course, this is conclusion. We have this is the finding of the research. Of course, we have two concepts of deposit insurance. We have the implicit and explicit. As we said, the implicit is not clearly mentioned in the legislation of a particular country, but is implied. But explicit is clearly stated. Of course, in order to practice this also, it has to comply with the Sharia principles. Of course, we have to look at the maslaha, that is the public interest. The benefit is going to bring to the public, and at the same time, it has to comply with the Sharia principle. Of course, we have mentioned that also Malaysia, they adopt two systems of deposit insurance. That is the conventional one and the Islamic one. But both two are governed under the same institution. And of course, we see that in Malaysia, they adopt this kafala bil Oturum in order to practice this deposit insurance based on the fatwa by the Sharia Advisory Council of Bank Negara. So of course, we know that the implementation and the practice of this deposit insurance is still of course work in progress, because not only this deposit insurance, a lot of this Islamic financial practices that is very debatable. We have had a lot of papers here, debates. Everyone will present and then a debate will, people will say this is not Islamic. So some will say, okay, if it's not Islamic, what shall we do? So in brief, we should know that, in my opinion, if we criticize, we have to bring an alternative. At least bring an alternative, even if it's not implemented, but at least you have a model that you can show us, this is what I am suggesting, which is better than the current one. Because if we keep on criticizing that this is not Islamic, yes, it's not Islamic, but sometimes the dilemma is that we don't know, because these financial institutions, they are there to make money. So we shouldn't expect any charity activities from them. They are there to make money. So we have to try as much as we can. Maybe our professors, they should try maybe to bring alternatives to the Islamic countries, that is the government of Islamic countries, to show them practical model, not just criticize and then no alternative. So in brief, this is what the research has mentioned. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Dr. Yusuf. It's really controversial subject, this deposit insurance, especially in terms of the Islamic perspective. And I know that you have the question, so we can get a few questions.
Thank you for your kind and introductory presentation. I have some questions about Malaysian application of deposit insurance.
Okay.
Firstly, is there any doubt considering Islamic sensitivity and Sharia in kafala bil ujur?
Yes,
You guarantee someone and you get some
yes, you get
fee or commission.
Yes.
I don't know the details, so I'm asking.
Yes, some scholars, that is
Please.
what I have mentioned. This contract is adopted by the SAC, Sharia Advisory Council of Bank Negara, Malaysia. They are the highest authority. With anything related to Islamic principles, we are in Islamic financial issues, they are the highest authority. So they issue fatwa. So they are the ones who adopted this. But of course, there are criticism that of course kafala bil cannot be adopted. Because if you guarantee someone, how can you guarantee someone voluntarily and you are asking him to give you something?
What is the meaning of
kafala? Yes. What is the meaning of guarantee?
Guarantee.
So
the second one is that what's the main reason, the purpose of Malaysian authorities to rule the conventional and Islamic banking deposit insurance system under one umbrella? And does it arise any doubt of haram in mind of people? What's the main reason? Why do they
put
took it in one umbrella, under one umbrella? Do they use the funds, the money power to finance?
No, the practices are different. Even the fund and everything, they are separate. But they are under the same body. So of course, the Islamic one is different and the conventional one is different.
The fund is different?
Yes, it's different.
Just the rules are shaped by...
Yes, just to govern, just to manage. But for example, the funds are different. The funds from the Islamic, that is insurance companies, the takaful companies, of course, is different from that of the conventional insurance companies.
And the last one,
is there any question?
This is not a question.
Comment.
As an alternative, for instance, associations of Islamic banks or participation banks may generate some funds to support this system. They may separate some of their profits in a pool and they may support the system.
This is a suggestion, so maybe you can try to put it in.
I will talk to my bosses.
Yes. Sometimes, a lot of you suggest, but sometimes the governments are not willing, maybe because of some interest.
Is there any question?
Yes. But it's good, at least.
I have a question, there is no question. I mean, you said like, we criticize this deposit insurance in Islamic perspective.
Yes.
And if we criticize that we need to find the
alternative, yes.
I mean, do we really need the alternative for this? I mean, because
we really need it.
In look at the main purpose in Islam, deposit insurance is, is okay in terms of the Sharia. I mean, we need really alternative for this. I mean, without deposit insurance, Islamic banking, the survive a long time.
Okay.
And still it can survive. I mean, we really need the deposit insurance.
No, but of course, so you cannot foresee what will become in the future. Something may happen to the Islamic banks, right? In the future, people may lose their money as a result of some unforeseen circumstances. So we may need it, of course we need it. But for example, the issue is how can we make it Islamic? If we say the current practice is un-Islamic. Because even as you have mentioned, this adoption of kafala bil ujur is being criticized. So we need an alternative. That is that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Our second paper is the relationship between the participation index, Borsa, Istanbul index, and exchange rate, evidence from the symmetrics and asymmetrics causality test. This is, I guess, an empirical study. We present Mücahit Özdemir.
The study, it's one part of our study which we are doing this with Professor Asutay and my colleague from Saghir University of Comparative. First, we try to analyze the relationship between participation index, conventional index, participation index, I mean Islamic index, but in Turkey we are using participation word in Islamic banking, also in Islamic index, and interest rates. And there were some relationship between participation index and interest rates. It is easier to evaluate interest rate and participation index, but we try to understand other indicators, investment indicators, how is the relationship between conventional Islamic and exchange rates, and we are trying to understand is there any differences between participation Islamic index and conventional index with exchange rates. First of all, is it working? Okay, sorry. My presentation composed these parts. First, I will give a brief introduction about Islamic index and also participation index in Turkey, and I will give a literature about some empirical studies, comparing Islamic and conventional index, and also I will mention about research methodology and present you our findings, and I will conclude my presentation. First of all, maybe you are familiar with Islamic index. Why we need Islamic index and what is the importance of this Islamic index is that there is a screening criteria. It's a subset of global securities. It is not a different equities. There is a global or local index, stock markets, and some shares which are traded in stock markets are screened, some criteria which are is riba, meisir, garar, haram business activities. A stock, company stocks which are not doing these prohibited activities, I mean riba, meisir, garar, haram, we are including these shares in Islamic index. But we are using Sharia screening procedures. First Islamic index was founded by FTSE Global Islamic Index with cooperation with Kuwait investors in 1998, and also it was followed by Dow Jones Islamic Market Index next year. And now in global world, there are lots of Islamic index composed. For example, the leading are MSCI World Islamic Index, Dow Jones World Islamic Index, Standard & Poor's Islamic Index, and also Kuala Lumpur is also important, one of the Islamic index. There are lots of stock markets traded in Kuala Lumpur Islamic Index. And also, the volume of these index are very low compared with conventional ones. For example, in Turkey, we are adding 50, and also there is another index 30 stock market index in this participation index, and also but there are more than 400 company shares are traded in conventional index in Borsa Istanbul. Forces in trade of these Islamic index are relatively very low, I mean compared with the conventional index, but they are outperforming in recent years especially. I will show you our graph related with participation index in Turkey. Participation index, there are also in Turkey there are some attempts to launch an Islamic index, but they didn't successful until 2011. But there is also separate index which composed of Islamic companies stock markets. This is Dow Jones Islamic Market Turkey Index. They included some of these Turkish companies' stock markets in this index. They launched this 2004, but it is not listed to Turkish markets. In 2007, first Islamic index in Turkey, which is called Participation Index, was launched, and it's including 30 companies, and also they launch another index, Participation 50 Index, next year, not next year, 2014. Why we are using this Participation Index? This is, for example, I am a interest sensitive, not just an interest sensitive, because there's also another Maisir, Garar, prohibited activities. I would like to invest my money in stock markets, which is very risky market, and I don't want to invest my money, for example, interest related activities, companies, for example, banks and other insurance companies. I would like to invest Sharia compliant companies. For this reason, we are using Participation Index to show the Sharia compliance company you can invest, and also we can make a comparison between conventional index and also in Islamic index performance by using this index. And also there are lots of, in Turkey, especially recent years, that because of the some of incentives for pension funds, there are some exchange traded funds which are linked to Islamic Participation Index. Some of the pension funds compose these exchange traded funds, and people and companies can invest their money to exchange traded funds which are related with Participation Index. In Turkey, we are calling Katılım pension funds. And also, some foreign investors who are sensitive in Sharia compliance, for instance, we are providing them a product which can easily invest their money to Turkish stocks markets. What are the screening criteria? There are some changes in global application and Turkish application, but mostly they are same. First of all, when they are screening the whole companies in Turkish stock market, first they are looking the areas of activities. These companies, their main areas activities, prohibited activities. If some companies are dealing with, for example, alcoholic beverages, gambling, pork, and also weapons, they are not including these companies to Participation Index. First, they are looking the sector screens, and then financial screens. There are some ratios because we cannot totally eradicate interest activities from these companies' balance sheet or income statements. For instance, there are some limits. Total interest market value must be lower than 30%, not zero. And also interest-bearing cash and securities divided market value also must be lower than 30%. And also income from, there should be some income, there should be income related with these activities. They have to be lower than 5%. These are the companies which are including in Participation Index. Most of them manufacturing companies. You can see the performance of comparison between performance of Participation Index and Borsa Istanbul 100 Index. There is a decoupling when the first Islamic index launched. They outperformed, and compounded annual growth rate of WIST 100 was 8.8%, but performance of Islamic index, Participation Index, is higher than, which is 10.6%. Most of the literature about conventional and Islamic index, they are comparing their performance. You can see this literature. I don't give a detail about them. And also there are some other papers about the conventional index. Sorry, I wrote this one wrong. The conventional index and exchange rates. They also look the relationship between causality and causality between conventional index and exchange rates. Related with the Turkish literature, there are few studies on Islamic and index, participation index and conventional index. They were focusing on interstate relationship between those two index, and also related with Turkish Borsa Istanbul case. There are some studies which are trying to understand the relationship between conventional index and also exchange rates, not Islamic index. In our study, we used this index launched in 2011 until 12 July 2016. We get a daily data, and we use this hypothesis. We are trying to understand the relationship participation separately from participation index and exchange rate. Exchange rate, I mean the dollar TRL currency and also euro TRL currency. And also this exchange rates, causality between these exchange rates to conventional index. It's relatively new. First we use Akkaya and Hatemi causality test, and then we use a relatively new econometric method which gives us the positive and negative shocks of this series. How is the relationship between positive shocks and negative shocks, which name is HTMJ, asymmetric causality test. These are the Zviot Andreev's breaking dates. I will immediately mention about it. First, participation index breaking dates is EU debt crisis. These dates, there are global market are dealing with a Eurozone currency crisis, and also about this breaking date, Fed announced this is the highest level these days. Was the highest level of the Borsa Istanbul performance. Zviot Andreev's test gives this date about breaking date, and why the Borsa Istanbul started to decrease from these days, because Bernanke announced that Fed will start with the tapering process. They will finish the quantitative easing, and then Turkish markets started to decrease. And also there is no significant event or news about these dates, Euro, Dollar TL and Euro TL. When we look to the first econometric model, our first test, we have seen that exchange rates, Euro TL and also Euro TRL and also Dollar TRL has effect causality on participation index and also Borsa Istanbul index. Another test, asymmetric causality test, we can see the positive shocks of these indicators, how they are, what is the causality between positive shocks. We can see that there is also one causality between dollar TRL to Borsa Istanbul index. There are not a causality between another positive shocks, causality between another indicators. When we look to negative shocks, it's a little bit confusing. It's very difficult to evaluate this. All negative shocks, participation index, exchange rate, Euro TRL, Dollar TRL, and conventional index, there are causality between all these variables. Negative change in participation index and Borsa Istanbul cause negative change in US dollar and Euro TRL, and also negative change in US dollar TRL and Euro TRL cause negative changes in participation index and also Borsa Istanbul index. How can we evaluate these results? It is clear that exchange rates has effect on performance of participation index and also conventional index. But we can split positive and negative shocks. We cannot clearly get information about this result. For instance, if you have any comments on this, especially positive and negative shocks effect on participation and conventional index, it will be a pleasure for me to get your feedback. How can we evaluate the results? Thank you.
Thank you. Mücahit, can this do the empirical presentation?
Yes, this is the results of.
Okay, if you have any question, any question? No question?
Do we have?
I have a question. Okay. Why you want to use like the asymmetric causality test?
Yeah.
What do you expect?
First, in our first part of our study, first we would like to see the economic indicators, for example, exchange rates, interest rates, and also petroleum prices. We would like to see their changes in these indicators. Is there any causality between participation index and conventional index? And also, is there any difference between this participation and conventional index? When we look to the interest rate, you can say that easily. Yes, interest rate has, if interest rate has a causality between participation index, which has a criteria, most of them related with interest activities. Yes, it makes easier to comment on this. If there is a causality, and also there was a causality between interest rate and participation index, we can see that because of these threshold levels, we cannot eradicate wholly interest rate. We have some levels, 30%. For instance, these companies has some interest-bearing activities. For instance, so changes in interest rate has a causality between participation index. We can easily evaluate. But in terms of exchange rates, we cannot comment clearly. But we try to understand, is there any difference conventional and Islamic index of exchange rate has any effect on conventional and Islamic index? We haven't seen any significant difference between these index because the main point in Islamic index is related with interest-bearing activities.
You know, as the Mücahit said, when we use the asymmetric causality test, it can be like the panel or the other. Mostly we think about in terms of the stock market, investors behave different, positive and negative shocks. Then we look at the picture from in terms of the behavioral finance. So we have to explain the life test, maybe, in terms of the behavioral finance. Okay, also the relationship between the exchange rate and the stock market is really complex. Because if you look at we give some literature, they say that some of them give the positive relationship between them, some of them negative, some of them they cannot find any relationship between the exchange rate and the stock market. Is I know that because this topic is also in my dissertation, is related to like the structure of the stock market. You have to more importer company or exporter company because it's affecting how the exchange rate affects your stock market. Okay, thanks if there is no question. Okay, our last paper is will present by Dr. Turgay Kart, and title is Exploring the Relationship Between Sharia Governance and Corporate Social Responsibility Disclosure, Performance in Islamic.
Islamic banks. I chose 9 countries and 18 banks from different regions. It's because of the Sharia governance regimes. There are 4 different Sharia governance regimes. So, in terms of these Sharia governance regimes, I chose my sample countries. First, I will start with a brief introduction about the importance of corporate social responsibility disclosure and Sharia governance, and then I will try to explain my descriptive and inferential analysis and data. I think we should mention the importance of corporate social responsibility disclosure by give reference to moral and fiqh issues. First, according to Professor Asutay, mainly foundational axioms of Islamic moral economy is mainly human-centered development and social justice based. On the other hand, when we look at al-Shari'ah, the definition by Riky state that human well-being implies increasing of material and spiritual well-being, providing social and economic justice, elevation of poverty in society, optimum use of resource, equitable distribution of income, universal brotherhood, and freedom of the individual as part of corporate social responsibility. The social responsibility of Islamic banking and financial institutions is not just includes the Sharia compliance of financial transactions and operations. So they should consider the social and the environmental objectives of their banking policies. There are 4 Sharia governance regimes which is defined by Ahmed, I think. One of them is legally constructed. In my study, there is no any banks who is using these Sharia governance regimes. Robust Sharia governance regimes is being used by Malaysia, Indonesia, and Pakistan. They have, in these countries, they have at both national and organizational level a Sharia governance system. When we look at passive Sharia governance systems, it's being used this system is being used at Kuwait and United Arab Emirates, and they just have at the organizational level Sharia governance systems. Lastly, market-driven Sharia governance regimes. Sharia Scholar Board at organizational level is responsible with Sharia issues. In this study, I wanted to investigate the relationship between corporate social responsibility and Sharia governance. In this way, I created 2 indexes. One is for corporate social responsibility disclosure index, and the other is for Sharia governance index. I chose the annual reports of these sample banks, and try to examine the relationship between CSR and Sharia governance. These countries is from Malaysia. These banks were selected from Malaysia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, Bangladesh, and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. My research questions is what's the level of CSR disclosure in the selected Islamic banks which operate in 9 countries, which I mentioned the previous slide. Is there any relationship between the Sharia governance model and the CSR disclosure, and what is the nature of causality between Sharia governance disclosure and CSR disclosure? Data and method. This study is based on quantitative and qualitative method. For quantitative, I analyzed correlation and causality test. For qualitative, on the other hand, for qualitative analysis, I used content analysis by examining the annual report of these banks from 2009 and 2013 for 5 years period. When we look at the sampled countries to understand which Sharia governance model they use, Malaysia, Indonesia and Pakistan is mainly governed by robust Sharia governance model. Kuwait, Qatar and United Arab Emirates passive Sharia governance model, and market-driven Sharia governance model is being used by United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia and Bangladesh. As I mentioned before, I used two index. One is for CSR disclosure and the other is for Sharia governance. For CSR disclosure index, I modify the ethical identity index, which is being created by Hanifa and Hudai, and they divided into 5 dimensions: underlying philosophy and values, provision of interest-free products and services, restriction to Islamically acceptable deals, focus on development and social goals, subject to additional reviews by the SSB Sharia Scholar Board. And Sharia Governance Index is formed by different international regulatory bodies such as AOF for governance standards, IFSB, OECD Principle of Corporate Governance, and Basel Committee. My data analysis method was evaluate the dimension of index which I have used. In this way, one score is to be given for each item and disclosed in annual report, 0 for non-disclosed item, and there was no penalty for irrelevant items in annual reports. I just wanted to give this example to understand the content of ethical identity index. It's being there are 8 dimensions with total 78 statement variables. This is just one of them. I didn't want to put all of them in my presentation. And the banks which I have used in my study is from 9 countries and 18 banks. For example, from Malaysia, Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad. And this is an example about disclosure on vision and mission statement dimension. When we look at for Qatar, for 9 countries and 18 banks, we can see the below the country level score of this mission dimension. When we look at the overall CSR disclosure results at the bank level, we can see that the highest record, the highest score was belonged to Indonesia. This is at bank level, and the United Kingdom has the lowest score with 0.92. At country level, Indonesia has the highest score, 0.7, and UK the lowest score for country level of CSR disclosure. In terms of dimension, vision and mission statement has the highest score. Zakat, charity and benevolence, the lowest score of these dimensions. This table shows us the overall results of Sharia governance performance. At the previous slides, we looked at the CSR disclosure. When we look at the Sharia governance at bank level, Malaysia with 0.8 has the highest score of Sharia governance performance. At country level, it is the same. Malaysia has the highest record. These slides were related to descriptive analysis. When we want to check whether is there any correlation between CSR disclosure and Sharia governance or not, I checked first with Pearson correlation analysis, and we can see that there is a significant and positive correlation between two variables indicating a moderate level relationship. Then, with Spearman's test, it gives us the same results. There is a positive and significant correlation between CSR disclosure and Sharia governance disclosure. After this analysis, I want to check that what is about the direction of relationship between Sharia governance and CSR. In our hypothesis, we thought that a good Sharia governance practice will affect in a positive way good CSR practice. But our results showed us the opposite direction. According to our study, good CSR practice affect in a positive way good Sharia governance practice. We can see from this table these results. And we thought that what's the reason behind of this? Why good Sharia CSR practice affect Sharia governance in a positive way? This is because of CSR practice are generally well established in all over the world, and therefore Islamic banks have been following the suit in developing disclosure related to CSR. And another reason is that Sharia governance index disclosure for them is something for banks, Islamic banks, is something very new. So there is no previous example other as they are peculiar to Islamic banks. The last reason was that Sharia governance practice are affected by CSR disclosure practice because of learning process, in sense of learning from CSR disclosure practice in developing social Sharia governance index disclosure practice. And after this analysis, we want to check that whether is there any correlation between the CSR disclosure and Sharia governance scores and age of sampled banks. Then we checked, we used longevity. We looked at longevity between CSR disclosure and Sharia governance practice. This test produced positive, but not a strong relationship between CSR disclosure and age of the banks and also Sharia governance practice. When we look at the results, it's a bit significant for CSR disclosure with 0.4, but for Sharia governance index it's not significant. This Spearman's rule test give us the same results. When you look at the correlation coefficient for CSR disclosure index, it's about 0.6, but for Sharia governance index, it's about 0.2. Lastly, we can say that Islamic banking and financial institutions don't meet the expectation of CSR and Sharia governance practice, especially the degree of CSR disclosure for the dimension of zakat, charity and benevolent loans was not satisfactory, and the regulatory authorities such as AOP, IFSB should regulate CSR disclosure standards that are mandatory for Islamic banking and financial institutions to disclose information about their compliance with Sharia principles and effects of their banking activities on the well-being of the society. The sampled banks, these 18 banks from 9 countries, fall short of the best Sharia governance practice. Thank you.
Many thanks to Dr. Turgay for his presentation. And it's really interesting topics, even if the results surprised me.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have any question.
One result also surprised me that, thanks for your presentation first, Mr. Kart. What do you think CSRD score result? I noticed one thing on one of your slide pages. Why is Indonesia on the top bottom line and United Kingdom Britain was on the bottom line on social responsibility? What do you think?
Yeah, it's
Also, Saudi Arabia is in the bottom line.
I didn't
Also
notice.
there
I was
is-
looking at the top and bottom line.
It's
What
because
may be the reason?
Yeah, it's because of their Sharia governance regime. For Indonesia, they govern the system by robust Sharia governance regime. But when we look at the United Kingdom, I will check. They use the market-driven Sharia governance regime. And when we look at the definition of this Sharia governance regime, especially for robust, you can see that there is at national and organizational level, there is a Sharia scholar board has been established for these Islamic banking and financial institutions at both national and organizational level. But when you look at the United Kingdom, they are being managed by different Sharia governance regime, and they don't have.
Are the authorized people from Arabian or Muslim people or from British people? Are the authorized people, the directors?
I didn't look at this issue.
Because European countries, at least they claim that they are very socially responsible on environment, on charity,
Yeah.
or I think design and advertising just. They are not socially responsible, then we can say. Because if they are very socially responsible in other areas.
This result is not related to being social responsible or not. I mean, I look at the corporate social responsibility disclosure. I mean, maybe you are doing, some social activities, but I didn't look at whether they do or not. My title, the title of my research was CSR disclosure and Sharia governance disclosure.
The relation.
Yeah.
But of course, referring to the question, in the UK, you would normally expect a better disclosure, because that's by nature. The problems with Islamic banks in the UK, why they do not have, one, of course, the major difficulty, only one retail bank. The others are investment banks. And investment banks so far in the UK have not been part of the larger social community. They have been very specialized banks.
Do you mean Islamic banks or?
Islamic, I'm talking about Islamic ones. Because we have 5 Islamic banks in the UK, 4 of them are investment banks, 1 of them is retail bank. Retail banks, of course, the advantage for retail banks, they can easily become part of the society and community. But investment banks, unfortunately, they do not have that aim.
So they are profit-based? They are completely profit-based?
Yeah, that's a different. I mean, the retail banks, of course, profit-oriented, but because they are part and parcel of the larger society, they act within society. They have branches in the high streets and every corner, so their engagement with society it is much extensive level. However, for investment banks, the same thing is not true, and that created a distinction for the UK results. Islamic Bank of Britain, or as it is called now, Al-Rayyan Bank, has higher disclosure, but then when you have a lower disclosure from an investment bank, the average brings that down.
Thank you.
Hope that explains.
Is there any
It was
question? Any question? If I can make a comment. Okay, you have the 18 observation. I mean, in terms of the econometrics, like 18 observation is not enough because especially this causality test. How can I say? Because like all of these tests, they assume that there is a normality. And to be a normality, they should be at least like 30 or 40 observation. So like, I mean, your result is you can, you can give the result, but in terms of the econometrics, I mean, it's a little problematic.
But one of the most important limitations about to reach the annual report of Islamic banks, and we have limited Islamic banks. Amongst these Islamic banks, it was so difficult to find their annual report by internet and their website. So for 9 countries, even I cannot reach any reports for Iranian Islamic banks. So I wanted to choose countries according to being able to reach or not this annual report.
I think the observation is not a problem because it covers 10 years.
5 years, Prof.
Huh?
5 years.
Sorry, 5 years.
Oh, that,
5 times 18, and that overcomes the problem.
yeah.
Yep.
Because you say the N is 18, okay.
Yes.
Then is the
so
final
it
data
is,
is,
it is 18 banks times 5 years.
80
So observation brings up to reasonable level. However, for of course larger econometric study, that even would be problematic because then you would have to introduce control variables, and you wouldn't be able to find all those control variables for all each countries, and hence you would end up with unbalanced data, and explanation would be terribly limited. Therefore, for an econometric study, you really need to have at least like 10 years with perhaps 30, 40 banks, and that can give you a good understanding. But because this is a disclosure analysis within Islamic accounting, and it is only descriptive statistics, and that didn't create any constraints. And because data is non-parametric, so that was okay.
And the last one, I may have missed it. Why you didn't include Turkey?
Because Turkey doesn't have a Shariah scholar board,
Has.
just advisory board.
So
It's
include
by
those.
regulation, yeah.
Okay, and thanks a lot. We finished this session, and we invite all the presenters here to give their certificates.
I will take it.
Okay, first one is Yusuf Abubakar.